compliance system. So we put a call out to industry and got a group of very enthusiastic and dedicated volunteers who became our working group. And as a group, we studied 13 food safety schemes and certification bodies to just find out what innovations are being applied in our region and elsewhere in the world around the audit process. So we mostly looked at the English-speaking world, not entirely. We had Austria in there, Armagap, but we had a few from Europe, Bord Beer in Ireland and Red Tractor in the UK. We looked at Canada Gap. We looked at the LGMA, the Leafy Greens Marketing Agreement in California. We looked at BRCGS and others. And locally, we looked at both, of course, Freshcare and NZ Gap. So we did this research, and the key areas that we found for innovation was the ones that are listed here on the screen. So the research, we did it in the first half of 2020, and something else rather large happened in the world around that time, which was, of course, COVID reared its ugly head. And blended audits we were finding at the beginning of our research that blended audits were becoming a thing, but this became much more advanced as COVID restrictions and countries' lockdowns prohibited auditors visiting sites. So blended audits were one of the things that were beginning to be an innovation that certainly picked up as COVID went on. Food safety culture was another area where we found innovation, particularly around lots of different schemes and CBs looking at how to move from this perceived 1 day per year mentality, not necessarily actual 1 day per year mentality, to an improved food safety culture across the business, 365 days a year. Another area where we found innovation was, or more to the point, probably a need for innovation or a desire for innovation, but some innovation as well, was auditor professional development, training, incentive programs, and attracting new auditors to the profession. This was an issue that came up again and again across the schemes and CBs that we spoke to, that attracting new auditors was a challenge, particularly because of the way that the auditing profession is structured, requiring more senior people, but also often requiring people to be on the road for long periods of time. Another innovation, quite controversial, was around risk-based assessments, determining audit frequency. And the risk-based assessments can be go both ways, in that an increased amount of audit frequency with high risk products or with lots of problems. And then more controversially, a lower risk audit frequency for those who are good performers, consistently good performers, and with lower risk commodities. Though that second part is a tricky area, particularly for GFSI benchmark schemes. Unannounced audits and spot checks are certainly something that is on the radar and happening, and also happening here in Australia. And then also a whole suite of new technologies is being investigated, and this includes things like wearables. That's a new word that I discovered, such as smart glasses, and this ties in with the blended audit approach, but it's also things around audit integrity, algorithms and blockchain and various other things. So there were the areas that we found innovation. And then we released the report and a summary in August 2020. And we went out to industry and said, we've found all this information, we've got these recommendations. What do you think are the top 5 priorities, and what feedback do you have for us on the recommendations? So industry, individuals and representing different businesses sent us, a range of different comments and submissions around what they saw as top priorities for innovation in the audit process. The first two were both around technology. Technology definitely came up as the area, if you bring it all together, the area where industry saw the most potential or it was mentioned most often as having a potential for innovation. And so the first of those, I've split the technology into two, which is the ability to offer blended or remote audits was seen as a potential area, though since GFSI has changed its benchmarking requirements to allow it, is now an actual area for innovation to occur. But there was some caveats with that, particularly around Wi-Fi issues, particularly around regional areas, regional and rural areas, but also coming around issues around farmers and growers still, maybe some of them operating with a pad and pencil, and the idea of uploading material and using a tablet or a phone to complete the audit or do parts of the audit. There may be some issues around that, and that comes down, in fact, to the last bullet point on this slide, which is around capacity building for the use of new technologies. Then there was a grab bag of top priorities around use of technology to do other things, such as artificial intelligence and audit integrity algorithms, transparency of audit results, centralized supplier databases, end-to-end technology throughout the audit process, such as audit plan generation, use of handheld devices, ease of capture of audit findings, or automated reporting, and so on. A top priority also was mentioned as alignment of auditor training, standards, requirements, and calibrations. Several respondents to our call for what are the top priorities indicated that risk-based approaches were worth investigating. There was several people or several organisations mentioned the unannounced audits were a priority, particularly around improving that food safety culture piece, 365 days a year. But there are some concerns also around unannounced audits, particularly that the audit needs to happen at a peak production time and it might impact on business processes. The other area that it was seen as ripe for innovation was the year-round audit approach, culture, year-round food safety culture, and constant monitoring of food safety in the produce industry. And as I mentioned before, wherever technology comes along, then looking at capacity building for introducing those. Another thing just to mention around the technology was that there was a bit of a push in the submissions we received not to focus on a particular type of technology. So don't focus on blockchain, but rather look for, well, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What is the problem? And then what are the solutions for that? So they were the main priorities. We will be having a workshop next week with a small group representing a cross-section of industry to focus on part of this piece, which is on the technology and the risk and culture side. And our objective there is to refine priorities and next steps. That's happening next Tuesday, the 1st of December. If you want to get involved, please let me know. We've got 5 speakers, but we'll be spending most of our workshop doing a prioritisation action arising from that list that I've just presented to you. So I just wanted to thank the industry working group who are listed there, but also all the contributors that we interviewed and spoke to and filled in our survey and so on, which are listed there. And none of this work would have been possible without the Fresh Produce Safety Centre's supporters, which are very generous at not only getting involved in our activities, but also supporting the centre so that we can do this work. And that's it from me.